Good morning. The markets are moving and so are you from the BizNews studios. This is BizNews Daybreak for Tuesday, the 3rd of February, 2026. I'm Alec Hogg. Here's the context you need to win the day. Some respite for gold after that crazy collapse of the last two trading sessions. And for the rand, which is tracking gold, not surprisingly, the international community still thinks that South Africa is massively dependent on gold. Overnight, the yellow metal stabilized around $4,800 an ounce. The rand is holding now at 16 to the US dollar. Bitcoin lifted its head after an awful few days, 5% better overnight at 78,400 per Bitcoin. Wall Street was firmer overnight with both the S&P 500 and Nasdaq gaining 0.5%. Apple, a feature, up 4% in a delayed reaction to those excellent quarterlies on Friday. The headlines, though, belong to Elon Musk and BizNews portfolio star performer Palantir. More on both those stories coming up. But first, here's the freshest news from our partners at Bloomberg.
Elon Musk is planning to merge SpaceX with his artificial intelligence firm xAI. We are told the combined company is expected to have a valuation of $1.25 trillion. Here is Bloomberg's Ryan Gould.
Elon's view is that we're going to have data centers in space, and part of this is about, putting compute and the idea of space exploration and sort of exploration of the universe together. This is clearly part of his vision. There is a very good quote that kind of encapsulates a lot of this, which is what, he wrote, I think, late last year, which is that in some ways his three companies, Tesla, SpaceX, and xAI, are going to come together. They're going to converge, and maybe this is kind of the first leg of the stool that we're now seeing.
That is Bloomberg's Ryan Gould. Bill and Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify in a House Oversight Committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. A spokesperson for the Clintons said they will appear after months of refusing to comply with subpoenas from the House Oversight Committee. This comes just days before the chamber was expected to vote to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress. We move to business news next. After the bell, Palantir Technologies reported fourth quarter revenue grew 70% to $1.41 billion. The company is also forecasting revenue for fiscal 2026 significantly above Wall Street expectations. And we got reaction from Gil Luria of D.A. Davidson.
They exceeded very high expectations. Their growth accelerated from more than 60% to more than 70%. There's no other software company even close. If you look at software companies 2 through 10, they're happy to grow somewhere between 20 and 30%, and they're usually decelerate.
That is Gil Luria from D.A. Davidson. Shares in Palantir were up 5% in late U.S. trading. The U.S. and India have reached a trade deal to reduce tariffs on Indian goods. This is after Prime Minister Narendra Modi agreed to stop buying Russian oil. President Trump said he would lower his 25% tariff on Indian goods to 18%. At the same time, overall levies on many Indian goods will be reduced from 50% to 18%, representing a significant cut for textiles, machinery, and other goods. And, President Trump said, India will move forward to purchase more than $500 billion of U.S. energy, technology, coal, and agricultural products.
There'll be more detail later in this episode on the SpaceX-xAI merger. And just for you to appreciate the scale of this, it creates a business that will be worth 3 times South Africa's GDP. Suck that one up for a moment. And those outstanding Palantir results, which shot the share price up 7% in the aftermarket. But first, a local story. Is South Africa the secret weapon for the next generation of global tech? ASP Isotopes CEO Paul Mann thinks so. In this clip, taken from an interview that we had yesterday, he explains how his South African team is producing the critical materials needed to keep Moore's Law alive when it comes to semiconductors, how it's going to power quantum computers and even treat cancer. Capabilities, he said, the US simply doesn't have. ASP Isotopes is listed on NASDAQ, but it also has a secondary listing here on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and was in the spotlight recently through its acquisition of Renogen, a company that has a massive helium deposit in Virginia in the Free State. Here's the story.
Our goal is to make isotopes for the world. Isotopes are used in many different industries, from nuclear fuel to nuclear medicine. And there's an emerging need for isotopes and new technologies as well. So take semiconductors, for example. Semiconductor development has followed Moore's law for the last 70 years. Moore's law states a semiconductor doubles in speed every 18 months. That's broadly been the case for the last 70 years or so. It's believed Moore's law stopped working in 2024. We're never going to make a faster semiconductor than the TSMC 2 nanometer chip, never a smaller or faster semiconductor without new materials. We kind of exhausted the laws of physics, is the belief. Silicon-28, we can increase the speed and conductivity of a semiconductor and make faster semiconductors. So the belief is that to make next generation semiconductors, the world will need Silicon-28, Germane-70. Our goal is to supply those two isotopes to the market. In terms of other things like quantum sensing, that's going to need maybe carbon-12 and nitrogen-15. Nuclear medicine will require things like lutetium-177, gadolinium-160, nickel-64 to treat these dreadful diseases. And, there's not many suppliers of those isotopes. Our goal is to become the supplier of those isotopes and really change people's lives for the better.
I'm sure there are a lot of South Africans who are absorbing this information and saying, but why does this bright guy come to this country? Why does he actually come to South Africa? Why not just stay in NASDAQ?
We have probably sort of over 300 employees in our company. I'm going to guess 296 of them are based here in South Africa. So that's why we're here. We hired some of the smartest nuclear physicists and nuclear engineers in the world to do this. Not many countries have that skill set. Certainly the United States doesn't. Certainly UK doesn't. So we were lucky to find these engineers and use them in South Africa. And it's going great.
Still on the local front, South Africa's film and television sector is reportedly in freefall, with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition accused of withholding over 600 million rand in approved incentive payments. The minister there, Parks Tau, has been in the news recently for promoting the 100 billion rand that is going to go into a fund for 100 black industrialists. Yeah, priorities. The DA's Toby Chance says the department has effectively admitted it's run out of funds to pay the film and television sector due to years of mismanagement. A failure, he says, has already shrunk the local industry by 50% and put tens of thousands of people on the street. In this excerpt, Chance explains the financial mess that's facing Parks and Parks Tau and the tragic economic cost of the delay. He spoke to my colleague Chris Steyn.
Why have the minister and his department been so slow to respond to this?
Well, I wish I knew the answer to that question. The answer to the written question I posed, apart from telling us that 663 million rand is owed, is that they don't have any money. And I think what I've been able to establish is that they overspent in previous years. And so they are trying to recoup the monies that had been spent that they shouldn't have spent. So I think that there's clearly evidence of mismanagement within this department over many years, dating back to the time when Minister Patel was the minister. And they were just spending money, left, right, and centre. Now, you could argue that in itself has, provided funding for the growth of the industry, which is fair enough. But it doesn't take away from the fact that the money is still owed. And we in the portfolio committee haven't seen evidence of this. We weren't told about it in detail. And so that's when, why it came as a bit of a surprise when I heard from the production industry that this was the problem. So Minister Patel and the department are going to have to look very hard at their budgets. And if necessary, they're going to have to go to Treasury to find extra money. Otherwise, this industry is in dire straits. Well, it already is in dire straits, but it could be even worse if things continue like this.
What has been the economic fallout of this?
Well, estimates are that there's been roughly a 50% contraction in the industry. Now, just to give you some of the numbers, it's worth anything up to 10 billion rand a year, this industry. Employs directly about 60,000 people, indirectly maybe another 100,000 people, mainly in the Western Cape and KZN, but also Gauteng and some of the other provinces. So that's a huge fallout. And of course, the other indirect consequence is that this industry provides a window for international viewers into South Africa and our beautiful landscapes, our tourism potential. So, we are essentially getting 10 billion rands worth of advertising without even, batting an eyelid. And this is what the economic impact is really showing, is how an industry that, not only employing a lot of people, but also is providing marketing and advertising for South Africa, is in danger of shooting ourselves in the foot. So it's a serious problem. And companies not just are closing down, but they're relocating. Some are relocating to Portugal, some to Malta. They're just closing shop. And it was actually tragic on Wednesday when we were walking through the crowds and talking to these producers, that their livelihoods over many, many years have just been trashed. And it's very, very difficult to recover from a thing like that.
This is where the unthinkable happened. They just came here and took his car.
No. I sold it to them. What's this?
It's crime scene tape. Did they pay you at least?
Within 15 minutes, money was in my account.
Were you happy with the number they brought you?
I got almost the same price of what I paid for the car. Everything was easy, everything was painless.
Well, there you have it, South Africa. With WeBuyCars, you won't come short. I'll tell you really.
1.93.
WeBuyCars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Onto that Palantir story now, one that is going to warm the hearts of many members of the BizNews tribe, given that we have been supporters of the company since the share price was below $9. That's the price at which we put it into the BizNews portfolios. And after the bump last night, it's, despite having been at $200 just the other day, it's now at 158. We'll start the day at 158 when New York opens this evening, our time. Here, though, we have D.A. Davidson's Gil Luria, one of the top tech analysts, who told Bloomberg Business Week this morning that Palantir has effectively accelerated away from the rest of the software industry. He argues that with growth moving from 60% year on year to over 70% year on year in the latest quarter, the numbers they released last night, our time, Palantir has now become a category of one that is solving problems with AI while its competitors are just talking about it.
Yeah, they exceeded very high expectations. Their growth accelerated from more than 60% to more than 70%. There's no other software company even close. If you look at software companies 2 through 10, they're happy to grow somewhere between 20 and 30%, and they're usually decelerating. So what Palantir is doing is remarkable. We're running out of superlatives. It's remarkable, and it exceeds very high expectations that came in, which is what is implied by the valuation. That's why the valuation is so high on Palantir, is because there's no other company like it.
Yeah, I mean, the company said we are an N of one. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more work we do, and we cover 40-something other software companies, there's nobody that's even close to what Palantir can do. It's a very unique combination of skills. They have absolute ownership of their customers' data in terms of the ability to organize it in a useful way. They have an army of 4 deployed engineers that help companies solve problems. They have direct relationships with CEOs. They have a strong mission and sense of purpose. There's no other software company like it. And the reason that's important is that they are actually solving problems for their customers. All these companies for the last 3 years have been trying to figure out, what can I do with AI? How can AI make my business better? And most have not really made much of a difference, apart from Palantir's customers that said, Palantir, hey, I'll hand you the keys and about $40 million a year, and you help me make my mission critical systems better with AI, and they're getting results. That's why they keep growing the business, especially the commercial business, at an increasingly fast rate. So it sounds arrogant to say you're a 901, but they're delivering behind that promise.
Got to give them props on some level. But having said that, I mean, one of the things that investors have been concerned about is that more than half of their revenues, you talk about the customer base, more than half of their revenues comes from the government. And some might say that's overexposure. How do you see it?
Yeah, but that won't be for long, right? The commercial business is growing so much faster than the government. Mind you, the U.S. government business just grew 66% year over year. It's just that the commercial grew a lot faster than that. So within a few quarters, the commercial business will be bigger than the government business in a good way, because it's doubling every year now, and the government business is growing, quote unquote, just 66%.
Just 66%. Can you explain some more of, like, just translate for us a little bit? We were talking with Romain earlier, and typically I would go to a press release to try to get information, but I don't understand what Alex Karp is saying here. He's the co-founder and CEO of Palantir. He says, quote, Palantir's Rule of 40 score is now an incredible 127%. What does that mean?
Oh, he's adding revenue growth with operating margin. And if you think about most companies, the term Rule of 40 was coined as the trade-off between revenue growth and profitability. And most software companies hover somewhere around that. If they're growing 10%, they have 30% profitability, that's 40. If they're growing 30% and have 10% operating margins, that's 40. So that's the yardstick that the industry has created for itself. And this is the yardstick that Dr. Karp likes to measure, because it shows how much farther ahead the Palantir is ahead of any software company. Again, the second highest company is probably half their rate. So
wow,
they are growing faster than any software company at a higher margin than any software company. They are more profitable than even the largest software companies, Microsoft, Adobe, Oracle, Salesforce. They're more profitable than those companies, and they're growing 3 or 4 times faster than those companies. So I think that's what Dr. Karp enjoys pointing out to everybody else.
The rumors are now reality, and Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow has the details of how it will all work. Ludlow has seen internal memos confirming the merger of Elon Musk's SpaceX and xAI, a deal driven by vertical integration. And as a reminder, this is a deal creating a company that is worth 3 times South Africa's annual GDP. My goodness, has Elon Musk made a dent in the world. Ludlow explains how SpaceX provides the launch capacity, while xAI will build the compute power to plan to run massive AI inference models from space. Here is Ludlow breaking down why this $1.25 trillion combination is happening right now.
Our understanding is 2 memos went out. One from Elon Musk to staff at SpaceX and I think at xAI as well. And it basically explains that the merger or combination is happening. And the rationale is vertical integration. This is something that's kind of been hiding in plain sight, right? And SpaceX provides the launch capacity. And together, the 2 companies design satellite form factor data centers, very focused on inference. And so, the models that xAI is developing can be run in space. Then separately, Brett Johnson, who is CSO of SpaceX, has sent a memo out explaining that the combined entity of SpaceX and xAI has this valuation of $1.25 trillion, which the maths kind of maps, right? Because SpaceX's last valuation on the table was $800 billion and xAI's last on its primary was $230 billion. And the only thing to add to get you up to speed, I guess, is that my understanding from sources and throughout this whole process is that this IPO is still on ahead. It's still going in June.
Should we think about Tesla joining SpaceX, AI?
This is the hypothesis, right? That in the end, in the long run, that it becomes a conglomerate in Elon Inc. What we reported at the end of last week was that there were two distinct scenarios being considered. A combination between public Tesla and private SpaceX, and then a completely different and alternative scenario of SpaceX and xAI. And obviously, this has moved quite quickly. SpaceX and xAI, based on the reporting of the last 30 minutes, it's happened. It's done. My understanding, though, is that there are a lot of concerns, particularly from some of the League of SpaceX investors, on SpaceX combining with a company that's losing $1 billion a month and has a very large pile of debt on its balance sheet, and that those investors saw the economics of the Tesla tie-up being much more sensible. But then, the thing is, right, the unanswered question was, well, hold on, if SpaceX were to merge or reverse merge or whatever the final transaction would be with Tesla, then there wouldn't be an IPO, right? So the whole point on the IPO is that, even now this xAI combination's done, they're going to need tens of billions of dollars literally just to buy the GPUs, because the GPUs that go into data centers, as abstract as that sounds, are the same as those that go into a data center on Earth, and they're going to cost a lot of money.
We close off with a story that reminds me so much of problems that we had in our country with the importation of products from China. We had a family dog who passed because of contaminated dog food, and I know we were one of thousands affected in this way. Well, 3 of the world's largest baby formula producers, think that one through, Nestle, Danone, and Lactalis, are facing a major backlash following the discovery of a dangerous toxin in their supply chain. The contamination, which traced back to a single supplier in China, has forced recalls across 65 countries. In this clip from our partners at the Financial Times, Victoria Craig, the host of the FT News Briefing, and Madeleine Speed unpack how the issue was detected and the severe reputational and financial risks that these companies now face.
3 of the world's biggest baby formula makers are facing a growing backlash. That's after an ingredient they sourced from a single supplier in China was contaminated with a dangerous toxin. Nestle, Danone, and Lactalis potentially added the toxin to hundreds of product lines before shipping them out to more than 65 countries across 5 continents. To break all of this down, I'm joined by the FT's Madeleine Speed, who's been reporting on this story. Hi, Madeleine.
Hi, Victoria.
So just walk us through this timeline. How was this contamination first discovered?
So the contamination was first discovered by Nestle, which is the world's biggest infant formula maker, back in December when they were doing routine checks on one of their factories in the Netherlands. And they found traces of this toxin called cereulide, which can be very dangerous. It can cause vomiting and food poisoning in infants who consume it. They then told authorities and then started trying to get to the bottom of where this had come from. This took a number of weeks because they had to test literally every single ingredient in multiple different product lines, and they eventually traced it to an ingredient called ARA oil, which they had bought from a supplier in Wuhan in China.
Now, we should mention Nestle told the FT it acted swiftly to notify all stakeholders about this issue. Lactalis told us it applies strict quality and safety protocols, and it pointed out that this particular toxin isn't on a list of required regulatory controls for infant products. Danone declined to comment. But widening this out a little bit, Madeleine, there's been a big market reaction to this discovery. What's been happening?
Yeah, so after Nestle flagged this, a number of other companies realized that their products were also potentially affected because they use the same supplier. So we've seen Nestle as well as French group Danone have both seen their share prices fall significantly since they announced quite widespread recalls. Analysts have been estimating the revenue losses that might happen as a result of these recalls. So in the case of Nestle, Jefferies analysts estimated that they could lose up to 1.6 billion euros of revenue. For Danone, it's a bit smaller. It just affected sales of about 40 million because it's a more limited recall. But beyond those, you have the financial, less quantifiable financial impact. Something like this can irreparably destroy a reputation of a brand for years and years to come until that company can rebuild back the trust of parents.
Yeah, you get one toxic issue in a supply chain and look at the impact. Billions of dollars in losses. Check the details, guys. Check the details. And now you have the edge. For the full interviews and the details behind these stories, head over to biznews.com. I'm Alec Hogg. Thank you for starting your morning with us. Now go and seize the day.